Good evening. Welcome to the Angry Capitalist Podcast. All right, welcome to episode 15 of the Angry Capitalist Podcast. Thank you for joining me this evening, and today I'll be discussing marketing. Within the context of what I'm going to speak about, this will be largely coming from a 10,000 foot view, but we will also touch down into the practitioner aspect of it without getting bogged up in the details about any one specific aspect of marketing for too long, nor being overly specific about marketing on one platform versus another, or the different types of mediums that are out there. So the purpose of this video will be to give the layperson a general overview of marketing and to give them the tools to start to become a practitioner of the discipline. This will be broken down into two sections. The first section will be covering three different main components of marketing. The second section, I'll be going over a few different mediums that are out there. Now, within the first section, we will have those three components. So component one is know your customers and understand the real worldview. Component two is elements of rhetoric. And component three is psychological factors. So for component one, know your customer. So if you forget everything else about this section and everything else that I'm talking about in regards to marketing, if you can remember to know your customer and understand their worldview, you'll be already on the path to success, or at the very least, you should be able to avoid failure. Within the context of marketing, when I talk about failure, fundamentally what I'm getting at is betraying your customers and giving your customers the sense that you don't know them, that you don't know who they are, and that you and them cannot relate with each other. Irrespective of individuals' politics, if you want a good example of this, look at Bud Light with the Millennium incident. If you were to draw up a caricature of the typical Bud Light drinker and how you might market to them, that is not how I would have done it. And if I were the CEO of Bud Light or anyone in charge of whoever came up with that, I would most likely fire them before committing honorable death by falling on my own sword. Because, damn, that was an oversight. Now, getting into the weeds on this topic. When we talk about knowing your customer, here are a few different things that you want to consider and that you want to understand about them. So, number one is, what age are they? And what generation do they belong to? So, are we talking about a boomer, an Xer, a millennial, or Gen Z? By knowing their approximate age and what generation they are, this can inform us about a lot of things, about what has this individual gone through in their life, what are their life experiences like. As an example, I would not try to market to Gen Z based on Pearl Harbor remembrance as some sort of appeal to their sense of patriotism and remembrance for a shared struggle, because they weren't alive when that happened. So they're not going to connect with that. Next, we want to look at is the individuals that you're trying to market to, are they more in touch with the masculine or more in touch with the feminine? And the reason that I make this distinction is because we do have guys out there who they more align with the feminine, And we do have women out there who they more align with the masculine. So are we talking like tomboys, women who do anything in the trades is a good example of this. You may be able to market to them in this aspect. Additionally, if we look at, let's say, more metropolitan males who live in like New York City or Miami, perhaps we want to keep in mind that, like, hey, we're not marketing to the same sort of dude as we would be someone who has worked as a lumberjack their whole life. Now, typically, that will likely align with the person's sex, but we want to remember to which are we trying to market to. Next, we have common life struggles. So, this ties into common life events based upon their generation and their demographics. Where I'm getting at with this is you want to think what kind of experiences have your customers shared in common. As an example for myself, I grew up in a time where I was right at the cutoff with the fall of the Twin Towers, and I have lived almost my entire life within the backdrop of the War on Terror. Likewise, I was a kid during 2008, early to mid teenager, roughly speaking, during this time in my life. So we can apply these common life struggles and common life events to your customers and use those as potential points of bonding. Additionally, and perhaps even more importantly, by understanding their common struggles, you can avoid certain topics that you know may be more polarizing than is helpful for you. Or further, you may know to avoid certain topics or certain things that they just can't relate to. I would argue that you're better off diving into a polarizing marketing campaign than you are a marketing campaign that no one within that age bracket is going to relate to whatsoever. Common life struggles can also go down to the more individual level, but your customers are all experiencing them. So, the common life struggles of new parents, as an example, common life struggles of recent high school graduates, retirees who are relying on pension or social security funds and they have to trim back their expenses, or they physically cannot take care of things around their house or their residence as well as they used to. So if you understand the common life struggles that your customer has, you can relate to them better and you can sell to them more effectively. Next, what forms of communication / social media do they use? Do your customers tend to spend the majority of their social media time on Facebook versus YouTube? Are they on TikTok? Where are your customers in terms of communication and social media? Likewise, outside of typical social media, when it comes to communication, do they use text messages? Do they use email, phone calls, video calls? How are they communicating one-on-one or within their close friends circle? Do they use Facebook Messenger primarily, or do you think that they use primarily Snapchat? These are some things to think about and consider as potential avenues for you to communicate with your customers. So if you need to follow up with them, what is a good way to do that? Or what is a good way to create an open channel for them to reach out to you? All right, next. Where do they physically spend their time? So if we understand that they tend to spend a lot of their online presence on specific social media apps, it's also a good idea to think about where do they physically spend their time. Are you selling to individuals who they wake up, go to work, and come right back home? Do they go to the bar typically? Do they belong to any clubs, associations? Could they potentially be involved with various religious organizations within your geography? These are things that you want to think about. Do they commute or do they work from home? As an example, with more people working from home now, if they're not going to commute on a preset route every day, do you want to put the money towards a billboard? These are the things you need to think about. Above all else, do your best to describe their tribe. Who do they identify with as being like them? This can transcend all kinds of common boundaries. So do your best to take your presuppositions about your customer base, put those on the back burner, and really sit down and put some time into studying them, observe them, take down notes, and understand before you impress your assumptions onto them, or before you even spend $1 on marketing. If you don't understand these people and what I'm talking about within these different aspects, you're not going to be able to market to them or sell to them. So don't even try until you know who they are. All right, next. So in terms of our second component, elements of rhetoric. This includes ethos, pathos, and logos. So if you're not familiar with it, that is Latin. Ethos, it refers to ethics. I say that for a modern terminology, credibility would be a good term. Pathos, that would be emotion. And logos, of course, would be logic or reason. So this even feeds back into knowing your customers a little bit more. So with ethos, credibility, and ethics, what do your customers find to be a source of credibility? Do they find academia to be a source of credibility, or do they have some distrust of academia? Do they find practitioners to be a source of credibility? Do they identify more with written word or verbally, having stuff verbally communicated to them? There was an individual that I worked with a while back who told me about this. It was a shock for me to learn it at first, but individuals, particularly in the boomer generation, they place a lot of credibility on stuff that is written down versus verbally communicated to them. Even without evidence of proof, even without citing of sources, some individuals will assign credibility to stuff just because it's in writing. So this is the stuff that you have to think of, not just what do they find credibility in, but what common sources of credibility do they perhaps have suspicion of? All right, next, pathos, emotion. Be very careful with dealing with pathos and appeals to individuals' emotions. What I mean by that is it's not necessarily beneficial to come at that problem from a poor me standpoint or to try to appeal to individuals' empathy. Empathy is great. It's a good thing to have, but if you want to separate people from their dollars, in my estimation, you're better off focusing on that individual's emotional state and what kind of things are going to motivate them into action and what kind of emotions currently exist within your customer base. Once again, go back to understanding who they are and what their worldview is. What kind of emotions currently exist? It is quite possible that you could market into a situation where there is a powder keg of emotion already there. And on the one hand, you don't want to miss that potential opportunity that pre-existing source of emotion could present. But likewise, you don't want to conduct yourself and do some kind of a misstep in the eyes of your customers and have them turn against you because you didn't understand what they felt and who they were. Third, we have logic and reason. I personally, when I tend to make decisions, particularly buying decisions, this is something that I do tend to rely on quite a bit. If people try to appeal to my emotions, I become suspicious. Likewise, my sense of ethos is so very specific that I've had a lot of companies accidentally piss me off because they attempted to apply to my ethos in a way that did not jive with me whatsoever. Typically, I'm more likely to buy from a machine, like cold. Here's what it is. Here's what you're getting. Super blunt, super basic. Give me the data. Don't rush me. Don't pressure me. Don't try to convince me. If you do anything like that, I'm going to start to become suspicious of you. But if you approach me in a very logical, detached method, I'll probably buy very quickly based on that. Even that is kind of applying to my sense of pathos. So when it comes to logos, don't try to overly reason with your prospect. However, you do want to still have a very good logos base case to communicate to your customers. Likewise, if you know your customers and you know how they operate, perhaps logos is the way to go forward with them. Are you marketing to like engineers or mathematicians or anyone in that kind of a field? Then yeah, logos is absolutely a fantastic method to market to them. Perhaps. So know your customer. Are they going to respond to logic? How will they respond to it? Use it, but don't over-index on it, is what I'm trying to get at. Okay, component 3, psychological factors. So there are all different factors out there, but I'm trying to boil this down into 5 factors that I believe most apply to marketing and towards trying to guide a customer into a sales process, or better yet, immediately into a buying decision. So the first one is recency bias. Effectively, and I'm rephrasing these definitions for more vernacular use and to make it easy to condense and understand it. So these are not Webster's definitions. I'm condensing this stuff down for our usability. So recency bias, this would be favoritism for the last solution observed. Or it could even be considered as favoritism for the last course of action observed. It may not even be a full-on solution to their problem, but if it's a course of action that they last observed, they'll often just fall into that pattern. Now, when it comes to a lot of these factors, but particularly recency, I liken it to, if you think about your customer more within the context of a hunter-gatherer, right? Within a survival context, right? Do you want to overexpend your resources, your physical energy, to go out and evaluate 50 different options to solve the solve the problem that you have, which you could be hungry? Or are you going to go with the most recent, and likely the conditions around that solution would still be the same? This is very key to this, is the conditions to solutions change and vary. So because of this, we tend to have a bias towards the most recent solution to a problem that we observed. So think of it like this. You're a hunter-gatherer. You just passed by a berry patch. You walked another quarter mile. You know you're in an area where there's not a lot of food. You're immediately going to go back to those berry bushes. You could have even observed a higher calorie source of food maybe a day or two ago if you're traveling, but you're going to go with the most recent thing that's likely still there to take advantage of that solution. So recency, just know that people are going to have favoritism for the last solution observed. This then goes right into frequency bias. So the way I describe this is it is favoritism or feeling more familiar or comfortable with exposure. So if there's a solution to a problem that is relatively new, right? If you have some kind of a groundbreaking widget or methodology that you want to try and sell, because it's new, people are going to be more cautious in regards to it. So to market it to your customers, you may want to dig a little bit more into frequency bias. Or, for example, even if you're a newer customer or you're a newer provider of a product or service, you may want to start out with just using some frequency to get potential prospects and customers more familiar and comfortable with you. So that's the frequency bias. Before I move on, I'll briefly say there may be solutions to problems which, frankly, are better than others, but customers will often go towards whichever one they feel more familiar or they feel more comfortable with. We can see here that we're diving into their pathos a bit, quite a bit, actually. Next, we have frequency illusion. This is different from the frequency bias in that individuals tend to notice things more frequently after exposure. As an example, when I was a very young kid, my grandmother had purchased a pomegranate that she had put out, like peeled and all that, showed me what it was. It was very cool kind of fruit, and she'd put that out as a snack for me. After the first time I had a pomegranate, I suddenly started to notice it all over the place. I noticed the Pom drink commercials. I noticed pomegranates in the store. It seemed like pomegranates were everywhere. I noticed certain candies had or drinks had pomegranate in it. What we're getting at here is that individuals will often be blind to stuff that is out there until they have some level of an interaction more directly with it. So you can put ads out there for stuff, but until they have some kind of an actual interaction with that thing, they may not even notice it. It could fall right into the background. Think of it like this, right? Most people tend to look at the world in terms of threats and opportunities or problems and solutions. So until you have some kind of an exposure with a potential problem or a potential solution, you're not a lot of stuff that exists around you is just going to fall into the background. Next, we have affinity bias. This is favoritism for that which is similar to oneself. This is pretty similar to the frequency bias, you could think, but it's more specific. This is going back into knowing who your customer is, what is their worldview, people are going to show favoritism for products, brands, services, etc., that feel familiar to themselves, not just familiar in general. If we think about a individual's sense of tribe, their sense of who they are, and those other individuals that are like-minded, that are like them. If you have a product or a service which is very in or easily associatable with their sense of tribe, with their sense of identity, your prospects and customers will become much more familiar to it and they'll favor it more. Next, we have anchoring effect. This is the first piece of information tends to be overweighted. Once again, anchoring effect, the first piece of information tends to be overweighted. Now, what I mean by this is that the first component of information individuals take in, they tend to place a higher value on it. They overweight that information than the rest of the information that they'll take in. The way that we can use that is just being aware of that. It goes into the idea that you want to be able to connect very quickly with your customer, and that perhaps you want to address their problem fairly quickly. This is still something I'm actually learning and trying to implement on my YouTube channel. Irregardless, though, if you keep in mind that even if you have not a whole lot of differentiation from your competitors, if you come out of the gate swinging with your marketing effort and you just focus on the first piece of information that slaps them in the face, that can be very powerful. And then everything else likely can fall in line just based off of that. Okay, next we're going to move into the second section. This is mediums. Now, when I say mediums, I don't mean spirit, are you there? I don't mean a medium of exchange. I'm talking about, well, actually, I am talking about a medium of exchange. I correct myself. I'm referring to different mediums of conveying information for the purpose of marketing. Okay. Now, of course, first off, we have social media presence. This could be as simple as your Facebook, Instagram, YouTube account, TikTok account, etc. After that, immediately, we then have social media ads. So if you know where your customers are, if you probe things with a social media presence and account, doing some organic posting, hey, we get traction on this platform versus this platform, then maybe try and run a few ads on that same platform. Then right after that, of course, we do have search engine listing, particularly when it comes to services. A lot of people, if they need something done, they just immediately enter it into Google or they enter it into Yelp and they see what top companies pop up and they go with one of those. After that, we then have affiliate sponsorships, effectively. This can cover a few different things. Likely you're familiar with podcasts. This can also apply to things such as sports teams. So as an example, with the UFC, they're sponsored by Monster Energy drink. That's an affiliate sponsorship. So you almost want to think, what kinds of things do your customers engage with that are somehow tangentially related to what you're selling? Even if it doesn't seem to have a direct correlation, just because the individuals who you're selling to And if you can list out the different interests that they have, right? And the different places that they go, you can market to them in places where your competitors likely have no presence whatsoever. Feel free to be creative with that one. Really think on it a little bit. And hey, if you need some marketing exposure and if you want to have a presence on this podcast, drop it down in the comments below. Promotion. Okay, moving on. Next, this sounds a little bit old and archaic, a few of these next ones, but they're still, in my estimation, very effective. I've had success with a few of these. These ones that I'm about to touch on also are more geography dependent. So, particularly if you're marketing a service or some kind of a store, and your business is more dependent upon your geographic limitations, these next mediums may be a really great way for you to start out, particularly to quickly gain customers. So, first we have paper medium. So, I refer to this as flyers, and one of my favorites, door hangers. So, it's like a fold up flyer with a special hole on it, so you can just put that right onto people's door handles. Also, business cards, billboards, and posters at events. So, billboards on the side of the road and various sporting events often have their sponsorships. So, this kind of links into the affiliate sponsorship, but you can often put up a poster at various sporting events. So, whether that be your local golf course, your Little League field, full professional baseball field, so on and so forth. That can be a really good avenue to market. Particularly, then you can also dial in more on who you're marketing to. What I mean by that, for example, is if you know that your customers are parents, you can then think, I want to put up some kind of a poster at the Little League sports stadium or whatever. Or if you know that your customers are upper class dudes, likely with drinking issues and marital problems, let's say you're a divorce lawyer, go ahead and put something up at the local golf course. Think in terms of where people spend their physical time when it comes to these. And also ask yourself, does that make sense for my customer to be at this place? Next, we have branded vehicles. So, particularly if you are in some kind of a service industry, having branded vehicles with your local number on them, that can be a really beneficial way to gain marketing exposure, particularly because that vehicle is going to move around all over the place. So, because people will see it quite frequently, you'll build up that sense of familiarity. And number 8 is word of mouth. One of the reasons why I left this for last is because, in my estimation, word of mouth, particularly with social media now, is one of the most powerful forms of marketing. For your benefit, yes, but also for your detriment. So let's say, for example, you have with your product, your service. Word of mouth will help build you up, but it will burn you down faster than anything you can possibly imagine. So keep that in mind when you're doing marketing. Obviously, if you can incorporate word of mouth to your benefit, absolutely go for it, do it. But particularly with this modern age of hypercommunication and where multiple people can see posts, if you lose the word of mouth battle, if you have people bad mouthing your product or your service to their friends and family, that'll put you in the dirt. And with that, best of luck to you. If you have any further questions in regards to marketing or any personal anecdote experience, something you found that worked very well, or something you tried that absolutely flopped, we all have failures. That's okay. Remember this with marketing. You're kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall, dude. Like, you got to be willing to try some stuff, have justification before you over index time and money. But when in doubt, fling spaghetti at the wall if you don't have anything else better going on. So, I hope this helps, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and hit the like button. And if you do want to see more content in regards to this, go ahead and subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell so you get notified when I do uploads. Likewise, I will try and link some kind of a relevant video at the end here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you should be able to go right ahead and click on those. If this is on Spotify, scroll through the channel. I don't know how you search stuff up on Spotify that well, but anyhow, thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your evening.